Okay, so I decided to do this little video today. We're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to do a hypothetical situation here, and it's pretty specific. Tooting my horn a little bit here, I guess. What if I ran for president? What if I ran for president? Hmm. Well, obviously, look at me. I'm just an average schmuck online, right? Who's going to take me seriously? But anyway, I just felt like having a little fun with that question. So, what if I ran for president? What would my platform be? Okay. Well, I'd like to start off by telling you guys my idea for an economic bill of rights. That would be one of the things that I do. And I have it right here in front of me. Okay, it says the U.S. Constitutional Amendment of Economic or Basic Economic Rights. So the United States Constitutional Amendment of Economic Rights. This amendment is binding to the United States Constitution and is not subject to alteration or elimination through legislation, executive order, or judicial mandate. In other words, nothing in here can be changed in any way outside of direct democracy among the people. By command of the natural inherent right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to which the United States Constitution entitles us, it is hereby recognized and forevermore established that the government of these United States has a direct responsibility to ensure the well-being of each and every individual, regardless of social, racial, legal, or economic status that resides within its borders. Abdication of this responsibility entitles the people of these United States to engage in self-preservation against those who would deny them their freedom from the unwanted influence of governmental or economic tyranny. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's quite a mouthful, but anyway. Article 1 of the Economic Bill of Rights. All residents within the United States jurisdiction are entitled to the basic provisions for sustaining life, such as food, water, basic shelter, clothing, health care, and education. Think about that last one for a moment, too. I mean, the other ones are obvious, right? We all need that to live. But education? Well, here's my reasoning. As long as you have senses that will take in information, you're able to take in that information and process it and interpret it, you're going to learn. You are going to be educated, whether it's structural and institutional or not. So now, whether it's correct, the information that you're interpreting is another story. And that said, of course, I really don't think we need a Department of Education on the federal level or even the state level. What I think we need is to leave education up to experts. You know, experts in any given field that we have, let them collaborate and get with professors and teachers and say, this is going to be our academic curriculum. When you get government of any level involved in education, what happens? That government entity then becomes the Ministry of Truth because they then have the power to censor at will. Whether it's constitutional or not, if they have the power and they find a way to do it, they'll do it if it's a threat to their power and or their profits. So yeah, I think that should be left up to experts. It should be more of a natural organic thing because education is natural and organic. But having said that, let's move on to Article 2. All residents within the United States jurisdiction reserve the right to organize and address grievances to any and all economic entities without risk of retaliation from any economic or government individual or institution. What this basically does is give people the right to unionize, the right to collectively bargain and individually bargain, the right to form a worker co-op. Okay? That's really what this is. It's the right to bargaining. Article 3. Regardless of the economic situation at hand, all occupants of the United States reserve the right to be safe and secure in their person and property and shall remain free from consequences detrimental to their well-being through decisions made by outside parties. So if a corporation decides to do something that would negatively affect the environment or the people around them, such as dumping toxic waste in a minority community, for example, well then that community would be properly compensated and those who did the deed will be held accountable under the law. This constitutional amendment would guarantee it. So if you're going to start a business, if you're going to do any economic activity, you cannot pose any kind of threat to anybody or any environment around you. You have to do it safely. You have to do it with the well-being of the people and environment around you in mind. That's just the way it has to be. So you have a right to be free from any detrimental decisions and effects that might ensue because the businesses wouldn't be allowed to make such decisions because it would negatively affect your health and the health of everyone around you. So here we go. Article 4. All United States citizens of legal adult age are entitled to a basic income designated for assurance of their inherent right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In other words, you have a right to a basic income. You would have a basic income via constitutional right to basically get the necessities. Now, housing as a right in the first article that I read, that's where housing first comes in. I'm a big proponent of that too. You need a house over your head first. You need a roof over your head first, not last. That shouldn't be the dream, okay? That should be the necessity. That should be the default. And that's what this would guarantee. That along with the first article. Section 1 of Article 4. A universal basic income program may be decided upon through state and or federal standards and may be carried out through either state-directed initiatives, federally directed initiatives, or in cooperation with decided state and federal initiatives. So it's either or. Basic incomes can be done either way. And this really is just giving room to really effectively institute the basic income as it's most fiscally viable. Okay? That's really what that's meant to do. Article 5. All residents of the United States jurisdiction reserve the right to engage in any economic activity of their choice, so long as said activity does not endanger the health, safety, or well-being of the environment, and as far as the interactions that ensue are done with respect and observation of all others' constitutional rights. What that means is businesses can no longer coerce workers into giving up any rights. All right, constitutional rights would have to be observed in the workplace, and collective bargaining included, a right to free speech, obviously, a right to be free from harm, or a right to be free from extortion and coercion, things like that. That's what this amendment guarantees. Section 1. Violation of this statute is subject to investigation, indictment, and prosecution under the law as prescribed by state and or federal legislation. So at the state or federal level, they come up with laws to say, hey, you can't, this is interpreted under the Constitution, you can't do this, so we're going to investigate, indict, and prosecute for this. It leaves a little bit of room for that as things change over time, because things do change over time. So what else would I do? Well, I have something called the U.S. Wartime Tax Act. Now, what that does is it takes all the proceeds of a war effort that's made by all companies involved, and they are taxed at 100% without exception, and all the proceeds go to funding of public services as best needed. So wherever we may fall short during times of war, the money that's made by corporations that are participating in the war effort, they, of course, will have to give up all those profits outside of course, normal salaries and whatnot. All the excess profits will be taxed at 100% to go to public programs. That money will go back to the people. And the only time that this will be allowed is when war is declared by Congress. War would no longer be a viable business model. So to hell with the military-industrial complex. If they try to do the kind of crap they're doing right now, those people involved will be prosecuted, and the institutions would either be shut down or they would be brought into the public fold if they're a private institution. So they have a choice to make, right? And if they want to say, oh, well, they'll assassinate you for thinking that or even proposing that, you know what? I'm just a messenger, dude. Once this information gets out there, it's out there. And people kind of want to see this kind of thing happen anyway. So threats don't bother me there. Another thing I would do, of course I would push for universal health care. That's obvious. It's a right under the Economic Bill of Rights. So we would nationalize some key industries, that being big pharma and big oil. Okay, those are the two big ones. I would break up big tech, but I would not nationalize big tech. However, I would bring, with the FCC, I believe that's how this is done, under the yoke of a public utility. So the internet would be a public utility, which means any social media platform would have to be regulated as a public utility. That's how that would work. And the way I would do this is like local broadband, local high-speed broadband internet across the nation. A good example of doing this would be like let's say you live in Houston, Texas. All right, for the sake of argument. Well, your email address would be whatever it is at hou.tx. If you lived in what if you lived in Minneapolis, okay, Minnesota, since it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities, it would be your handle at msp.mn, okay? That's what I'm getting at there. So local internet with local addresses, you get the point. That's just my own idea. I would obviously ban money in politics. I would say, okay, we're not going to do any more private funding of elections. We're going to do totally publicly funded elections. I would institute something called the Constitutional Guardians of America, and I would push for their creation and what they would do, and it would require a constitutional amendment. So this is a long project. I would actually push for grassroots work for state-by-state ballot initiatives to create their own state-sponsored CGA contingent. And what they would serve as, on the whole, is oversight for other government institutions. You can't trust the government to police itself. So they would basically be the watchdogs of the government. They would have no affiliation to the government economically, of course. Excuse me. Because we would have also a fully public banking system. That's another thing I would push for, is a fully decentralized public banking infrastructure and get rid of private banking. Because let's face it, man, it's private institutions like that, they're not necessary. Another thing I would nationalize, by the way, is insurance. If there's one area government should be big in, it's insuring the people. That's it. That, pharmaceuticals, energy, that should be government. But outside of those three things that are currently in the private marketplace, really, I think everything else in the private marketplace is fine. Another thing I would do is I would move towards a proportionate representation model for Congress. I would obviously push for ranked choice voting nationwide. That's obvious. But I would also move towards proportionate representation. Now, here's how that would work. Currently, we have districting for congressional districts, right, for Democrats and Republicans in the country. That would all go away. Under proportionate representation, every state would be able to have every party that's registered in their state. Every party, and there's more than two. Most states have the Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians. All right, those are the three that have all 50 state ballot access. Green Party, I think, has up to 48. Other states are trying to vie for other parties are trying to vie for registration across the country in different states. Once they do, and other parties under this would not be allowed to interfere with that, okay? So let's say, for example, you have 6 parties in a state, like let's say Florida. Well, let's say Florida had the Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party, Democratic Socialists of America, People's Party, and the Forward Party. Well, all 6 of them would be able to run elections in a given election cycle, and each winner of those parties' elections would be sent to Congress. They would be the 6 representatives from Florida, 1 from each party. And let's say the state of North Carolina had 5 parties. Let's say they had the Democrats and Republicans, Libertarians, Greens, and Communists, for the sake of argument. Well, they all run elections, and the winner of each party's election would go to Congress. Now, maybe Utah. Let's see, what do they got? They got Democrats and Republicans, Libertarians, Constitution Party, Working Families Party. Every winner of those parties would go to Congress. You see how that works? You would have a much more accurate representation if every party in those states that is registered as a party ran an election in a given election year. And that means that the number of seats in a given state in Congress could change depending on how many parties run elections in a given year. So it's a little messy, it's a little fluid, but at the same time, that's democracy. Democracy is very fluid, it's very organic, very messy. But this would be a lot fairer, a lot more adequate as far as representing the will of the people because more of them would be included by definition, and it would be more representative of the sentiment of the voters at that time. That's why it's subject to change depending on how many parties in a given state run elections. Now, what about foreign policy? Well, for one thing, war would no longer be an acceptable business model. I would definitely stick it to Saudi Arabia and say, screw you. We don't need your damn oil. We're going to, if you try anything against us, you try to orchestrate another hijacking once we pull all this military funding and all these weapons from you, we'll come after you and we'll topple your ass. That's what I would do to Saudi Arabia. I would try to soften tensions with Iran. I would try to work with the Iranian people to help them with their revolution over there as much as I can without directly interfering weapons-wise, money-wise, just moral support. That's all we can really do. I would definitely try to get peace talks with Russia. I'm really getting sick and tired of all this crap. I would try to soften relations again with China because, let's face it, this whole thing with China is nonsense. It's really nonsense. Our corporations went over there and gave the Chinese a gift. They didn't steal anything. Our corporations gave it to them. They left us hanging high and dry. But now that that's done, the fact remains we're in a global economy, right? We can still be a strong economy, and we can bring other things back. Manufacturing, more scientific professions, more. We have artistic professions out the wazoo in this country. Universal basic income would help mitigate the hardships associated with the life of the artist in this country, so there's that. But anyway, I would definitely join the ICC, okay? The U.S. would join under my presidency. We would officially join the United Nations. I don't think we are officially in the UN right now, although we host it here in the States, also in Brussels. I would analyze our relationship with NATO and see what we need to do to avoid any further catastrophe with Russia and other countries. I would certainly not be so soft on right-wing governments such as Modi in India or I don't think Duterte is in charge in the Philippines anymore. I could be mistaken about that. But the Revolutionary Guard in Iran, I would not be so like, come on, guys. I don't like what you're doing here. I'm not going to interfere in your country, but I stand with your people. So we're going to do everything we can to help your people. You don't have to like it, but we don't want war with you guys, but we don't want your people to suffer either. So that would be a starting point with Iran. I would definitely want to work with a leader like Lula in Brazil for reforestation, regenerative foresting, regenerative farming to help with climate change. That's where, that would be a good partnership there. Also, South Africa is really important as far as climate change. They really need help down there. Cape Town once went through a huge drought. I don't know if it's still going on. But another thing I would do domestically, I know I'm getting off topic on foreign policy here, but I would do a desalination and dam creation project across the country where around the whole coastlines, I would create dams and facilities to filter in rising water to help to mitigate sea level rise. You would process it, filter it, pump it out to reservoirs where people would use it as drinking water. I think we do that already in some places. I know Israel does that to an extent. So we could definitely use that here in the States. So that would be a good project. And also doing that could help mitigate states like Florida from going underwater. So something to think about there. What else would I do? I'm kind of farting in the brain right now. So anybody who sees this video, if you think my ideas are good, you think they're bad, let me know in the comments. If you have any other ideas, any other questions about what I would do if I were running for president, let me know. This was actually kind of a fun video to make, so I enjoyed it. I hope you guys did, and I'll talk to you later.